When my son told the nursing home I had no close family to avoid mandatory visits, I never imagined that decision would cost him a $2 million inheritance. Let me know where you're watching from today. And if you're new here, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to join our growing community. My name is Beverly Holloway, and at 73 years old, I thought I had seen it all. I was a mathematics teacher for 35 years at Lincoln High School in Seattle, where I dedicated my life to shaping young minds and nurturing their potential. My husband, Charles. A civil engineer passed away 5 years ago after 42 wonderful years of marriage. We raised our only son, Jason, with all the love and devotion any parents could give Jason. Holloway, now 45, became everything we hoped for, at least on paper. He graduated top of his class from Columbia Law School and now works as a partner at Preston & Associates, one of New York's most prestigious law firms. He married Nicole Whitmore, a 40-year-old plastic surgeon with her own successful practice on the Upper East Side. Together, they have 2 beautiful children, Emily, 12, and Michael, 10. I used to think I was blessed with the perfect family. I sold our 4-bedroom house in Seattle's Queen Anne neighborhood after Charles died, downsizing to a modest apartment. When Jason mentioned they were looking at penthouse apartments in Manhattan, I didn't hesitate to offer help. I transferred $850,000 from the house sale to help with their down payment, because, well, that's what mothers do for their children. The first few years after Charles's death were lonely but manageable. Jason would call once a week and the grandchildren would FaceTime me during Sunday dinners. Nicole always seemed too busy, but I understood the demands of her career. They visited Seattle twice a year, once for Thanksgiving and once during the summer. It wasn't much, but it was enough to keep me going. Then came the fall. It was a rainy October morning. Typical Seattle weather when I slipped on the wet steps outside my apartment building. The pain was immediate and excruciating. My hip was shattered. The doctors said requiring surgery and extensive rehabilitation. At my age, they warned recovery would be challenging. Jason flew in immediately, his face a mask of concern as he stood by my hospital bed. "Mom, we need to talk about your future," he said, squeezing my hand. "You can't live alone anymore. It's not safe." I nodded, expecting him to suggest I move to New York to be closer to them. Instead, he pulled out a glossy brochure for Sunset Gardens, a luxury senior living facility just outside Seattle. "It's the best in the state, Mom," he assured me. "They have physical therapy on site, 24-hour medical care, and lots of activities. You'll make friends and be well taken care of." Nicole chimed in via speakerphone, her voice crisp and professional. "Beverly, as a medical professional, I can tell you this is the best option. The facility has excellent ratings and a stellar reputation." What could I say? They were right about me not being able to live alone anymore. My mobility would be limited for months, possibly permanently, so I agreed, trusting that my son and daughter-in-law had my best interests at heart. The move happened quickly. Jason hired a company to pack up my apartment, putting most of my belongings in storage. "You won't need much at Sunset Gardens," he explained. "They provide everything." The facility was indeed beautiful. Marble floors, chandeliers in the lobby, and well-maintained gardens. My room was spacious and sunny with a view of the mountains. The staff seemed professional and caring. I told myself this was for the best. Jason stayed for 3 days to help me settle in. On his last day, he sat me down for another talk. "Mom, I need you to sign some papers," he said, producing a stack of documents. "It's just to protect your assets while you're here. We're setting up a trust, and I'll manage your finances to ensure you're taken care of." I hesitated. "Shouldn't I have a lawyer look at these?" "Mom, I am a lawyer," he laughed. "The best in New York. Trust me, this is standard procedure. We need to protect your assets from potential Medicare claims." Foolishly, I signed away my financial independence to the son I had raised, educated, and supported all his life. I thought I was in good hands. The first month at Sunset Gardens was an adjustment. Physical therapy was painful but necessary. I made a few acquaintances in the dining room and joined the book club. I waited for Jason's visits, expecting him to check on my progress regularly, but the visits never came. Not from Jason, not from Nicole, not even from my grandchildren. The weekly phone calls dwindled to monthly, then stopped altogether. When I called Jason's office, his secretary always said he was in meetings. When I called their home, I got voicemail. Let us know where you're watching from today, and if you're new here, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to join our growing community. Christmas came and went without a visit. We're skiing in Aspen. Jason texted, "We'll call soon." But he didn't. My 74th birthday passed unacknowledged. Mother's Day brought no flowers, no card, no call. It was during a routine meeting with the facility's social worker that I learned the truth. Mrs. Patterson, a kind woman in her 50s, was reviewing my file when she made an offhand comment that changed everything. "It must be difficult for you, Mrs. Holloway, having no close family to visit." I stared at her confused. "What do you mean? My son lives in New York, but he's supposed to." She looked uncomfortable, shifting papers on her desk. "According to your intake form, which your son filled out, you have no immediate family available for regular contact. It's marked right here. No close family. Resident is essentially alone." My heart started pounding. That's not true. I have a son, a daughter-in-law, 2 grandchildren. Mrs. Patterson's face softened with pity. "I'm so sorry. Sometimes families do this to avoid the mandatory visitation requirements. If residents have close family, we require monthly visits to ensure their well-being. But if they're listed as having no family..." The room spun. My own son had officially declared me alone in the world to avoid the inconvenience of monthly visits. Worse, I discovered he had transferred all my remaining assets, nearly $2 or $3 million in savings and investments, into accounts he controlled for my protection. The betrayal cut deeper than any physical pain I'd ever experienced. I lay awake that night remembering all the sacrifices Charles and I had made for Jason. The second jobs we worked to pay for his private school. The college fund we started when he was born. The family vacations we skipped to afford his law school tuition. And this was how he repaid us. By abandoning me in a nursing home and stealing my financial security. But as the weeks turned to months, something unexpected happened. A young woman named Margaret Chen began volunteering at Sunset Gardens. She was 28, a graphics designer who spent her Saturdays reading to residents and helping with art therapy classes. We met during one of these classes. I was struggling to hold a paintbrush with my arthritis when she gently showed me an adaptive grip. "My grandmother had the same problem," she said with a warm smile. "This might help." Margaret began visiting me every Saturday. She brought books from the library, taught me to use an iPad, and listened to my stories about teaching mathematics. Unlike the polite but distant staff, she seemed genuinely interested in my life. "Why do you spend your weekends here?" I asked her one day. "Surely you have better things to do at your age." She shrugged. "My grandmother raised me after my parents died. She was in a nursing home for the last 2 years of her life, and I visited her every day." After she passed, I realized how many residents never get visitors. I couldn't bear thinking about all those lonely people. When I developed pneumonia that winter, Margaret was there every day, not just Saturdays. She brought homemade soup read to me when I was too weak to hold a book, and advocated for me with the medical staff. "Where's your family?" she asked. One particularly bad day, holding my hand as I struggled to breathe. I closed my eyes. "I don't have any." "That's not true," she said firmly. "You have me." That was my turning point. As I recovered, I realized something had to change. I couldn't control Jason's actions, but I could control my response to them. I contacted Arnold Fitzgerald, an old friend and attorney who had handled Charles's estate. When I explained my situation, his normally cheerful voice turned serious. "Beverly, what Jason did may not be illegal, but it's certainly unethical. Let me look into your options." The news wasn't good. The trust documents I'd signed were ironclad. Jason had legal control of my assets. But Arnold had an idea. "You still have the vacation house in Oregon," he said. "It's in your name only, and Jason doesn't know about it. Charles bought it as a surprise for your 40th anniversary, but never got to give it to you, and you have your teacher's pension, which comes directly to you. The beach house in Cannon Beach was worth about $900,000. My pension, while modest, had accumulated to about $300,000 in a separate account. Jason didn't know existed. It wasn't much compared to what he'd taken, but it was something. I want to make a new will, I told Arnold, and I want to include some special provisions. We spent weeks crafting the perfect document. I left everything to Margaret Chen. The beach house, my pension, my grandmother's jewelry collection that Jason had declared lost in the move, and a detailed letter explaining why. But the masterpiece was the codicil. Arnold added at my request. Jason and Nicole would be required to attend the reading of the will in person at Sunset Gardens, in front of the facility's board of directors. They would have to walk through the same halls they'd avoided for years, face the staff they'd lied to, and hear exactly why they were being disinherited. I also asked Margaret to help me record a video message. If I couldn't confront Jason in person, this would have to do. Time passed. My health declined as it does. When you reach your 80s. Margaret remained constant visiting every week, even after she got promoted at work, and started dating a nice young man named David. You should be living your life, I told her one afternoon as she helped me sort through old photos, not spending it with an old woman. She squeezed my hand. You are part of my life, Beverly. The best part some days. When pneumonia returned 3 years after that first bout, we all knew it was different. Margaret called Jason from my bedside, leaving message after message. He never called back. I died on a Tuesday morning with Margaret holding my hand. She was the daughter. I never had the family I chose rather than the one I was born with. In my final moments, I felt nothing but peace and gratitude. The aftermath unfolded exactly as Arnold and I had planned. Jason and Nicole received formal notifications requiring their presence at Sunset Gardens for the reading of the will. The letter made it clear that failure to appear would result in immediate forfeiture of any potential claims to the estate. They arrived 2 weeks later. Jason in his expensive suit, and Nicole in designer clothes that cost more than Margaret made in a month. They sat stiffly in the facility's conference room, avoiding eye contact with the staff members who filtered in. To observe Arnold, began with the formal reading. I, Beverly, Marie Holloway, being of sound mind and body, do hereby declare this to be my last will and testament. When he reached the bequests, Jason's face turned from bored impatience to shock. To Margaret Chen, who showed me more love and kindness in 3 years than my own blood relatives did in a lifetime, I leave the entirety of my estate. This is ridiculous, Jason exploded. She manipulated a sick old woman. We'll contest this. Arnold held up his hand. There's more. Mrs. Holloway left a video message to be played at this time. The conference room screen flickered to life, and there I was, sitting in my favorite chair in the sunroom. I looked frail but determined. Hello, Jason, Nicole. If you're watching this, it means I'm gone and you're learning about my final wishes. I want you to know that this decision wasn't made in anger or spite, but with clear eyes and a full heart. Jason, you told this facility I had no close family to avoid visiting me. You took control of my finances under the pretense of protecting me, then left me here alone. You didn't come when I was sick. You didn't call on my birthdays. You didn't even let my grandchildren know their grandmother was still alive and thinking of them every day. But this isn't just about punishment. It's about rewarding the person who became my family. When my blood relatives abandoned me, Margaret came every week without fail. She held my hand through illness and loneliness. She listened to my stories and shared her own. She gave me what you withheld: love, time, and presence. The money you took from me, consider it your advance inheritance. The $850,000 I gave you for your penthouse. That was my gift given freely. But everything else, the beach house your father bought for our anniversary, my pension, my jewelry, my memories, goes to someone who earned it through kindness rather than entitlement. I hope someday you understand that family isn't just about DNA. It's about showing up, being present, and caring for others even when it's inconvenient. Margaret understood this. I pray that one day you will too. To Emily and Michael, my grandchildren, I'm sorry we didn't have more time together. That wasn't my choice. I love you both and hope you grow up to be better than the examples set before you. Goodbye, Jason. Despite everything, I still love you. I just love myself enough now to make better choices about who deserves my legacy. The screen went dark. The room was silent except for Nicole's sharp intake of breath and the soft crying of one of the nurses who had cared for me. Jason tried to contest the will. Of course, he hired 3 different law firms, spent tens of thousands in legal fees, and attempted to prove I was mentally incompetent when I made the changes. But Arnold had been thorough. We had medical evaluations, witness statements, and a paper trail showing Jason's financial manipulation and abandonment. 6 months after my death, the last appeal was denied. Margaret received everything I'd left her, about $2 million in total. True to her character, she used part of the money to establish the Beverly Holloway Scholarship Fund for underprivileged students pursuing mathematics degrees. She kept the beach house but opened it to other Sunset Gardens, volunteers for retreats and vacations. Jason's reputation in the legal community suffered when word spread about his treatment of his mother. Nicole lost several high-profile clients who didn't want to be associated with someone who could be so callous to family. But the real price they paid was in their relationship with their children. Emily, then 15, found out about her grandmother's death through social media. When Margaret posted a tribute to me, she somehow got Margaret's contact information and reached out hungry for stories about the grandmother. She barely knew. Michael followed suit a year later. Both children began questioning their parents' values and choices. The last I heard from Margaret, she had become a sort of surrogate aunt to my grandchildren. They visit her at the beach house every summer, learning about the grandmother they lost and the lessons she wanted to pass on. Sometimes the family we choose is more precious than the family we're born into. Love isn't measured by blood or obligation, but by presence and action. Margaret understood this. She became my daughter in every way that mattered, and in the end she inherited not just my earthly possessions, but the love and gratitude I carried in my heart. If you've ever experienced a situation where strangers became family, share your story in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories of justice and second chances. As I reflect on this story now, I'm struck by the irony of it all. Jason thought he was protecting his inheritance by avoiding the inconvenience of visiting me. Instead, his neglect cost him everything. The money he took control of was nothing compared to what he lost. Not just the beach house and my remaining assets, but the chance to be there for his mother. In her final years, to let his children know their grandmother, and to be the son I raised him to be. Margaret, on the other hand, gave freely of her time and compassion without expecting anything in return. She visited me not out of obligation, but out of genuine care. She became the family I needed when my own abandoned me. And in doing so, she gained not just an inheritance, but a legacy of love that continues to ripple through the lives of my grandchildren. The nurses at Sunset Gardens still talk about the day of the will reading. They say it was the first time they'd seen justice served so perfectly to family members who thought they could discard their elderly relatives without consequence. My story became a cautionary tale in the facility shared with new residents and their families, as a reminder that how we treat others, especially the vulnerable and elderly, matters more than we might think. Several families changed their visitation patterns after hearing what happened. Adult children who had been too busy suddenly found time for weekly visits. The facility even changed its policies, requiring more detailed documentation when families claimed residents had no close relatives, and instituting regular check-ins with all residents about their family, contact preferences. Margaret told me that after the will reading, she found Jason sitting in his car in the parking lot, his head in his hands. She approached him not with anger, but with the same compassion she'd shown me. "Your mother talked about you often," she said. She kept every school photo, every report card, every article about your legal victories. She was so proud of the boy you were. I think she always hoped that boy was still in there somewhere. Jason couldn't meet her eyes. I got so caught up in everything. The career, the money, the image. I told myself she was better off in the facility, that she didn't need me hovering over her. She didn't need you to hover, Margaret replied. She needed you to show up once a month. That's all the facility required. 12 visits a year to keep your mother from feeling abandoned. I know, he whispered. I know that now. Margaret later told me she gave him a box of my personal effects she'd found while cleaning out my room, letters I'd written but never sent photos of him as a child, a Mother's Day card I'd bought but couldn't bring myself to mail. Whether those items changed anything in Jason's heart, I can't say, but I like to think they planted a seed of reflection that might someday grow into genuine remorse and change. The story of my inheritance didn't end with the legal battles. Margaret used her design skills to create a beautiful memorial garden at Sunset Gardens in my honor. The Beverly Holloway Garden features a mathematics theme with stepping stones arranged in Fibonacci sequences and benches placed at geometrically perfect angles. It's become a favorite spot for residents and visitors alike. Every year on the anniversary of my death, Margaret hosts a small gathering in the garden. She invites my former students' colleagues from my teaching days and the Sunset Gardens staff who cared for me. Emily and Michael always attend, bringing flowers and sharing stories. They've learned about their grandmother. Jason has never come, though. Margaret tells me he sends a check to the scholarship fund every year, without fail. The beach house in Cannon Beach became more than just a valuable asset. Margaret transformed it into a retreat center for caregivers, offering free weekends to people who care for elderly relatives. She named it Beverly's Haven and decorated it with my book's photographs and the mathematics-themed artwork I created during my time at Sunset Gardens. Your grandmother believed in paying kindness forward. Margaret tells Emily and Michael during their summer visits she couldn't change what happened to her, but she could ensure that others wouldn't suffer the same loneliness. The scholarship fund has helped dozens of students pursue their dreams of becoming mathematics teachers. Each recipient receives a letter. Margaret wrote about me sharing my teaching philosophy and my belief that education is the greatest gift we can give to future generations. Some of these scholarship recipients now volunteer at senior facilities, creating a beautiful cycle of giving that would have made my teacher's heart proud. Perhaps the most unexpected outcome was the relationship that developed between Margaret and my grandchildren. Without the filter of their parents' guilt and defensiveness, Emily and Michael were able to learn about me as a person, not just as the grandmother their parents avoided. They discovered my love of mystery novels, my terrible cooking but excellent baking skills, my fear of heights but love of roller coasters, and my secret dream of writing a mathematics textbook for children. Margaret shared everything with them, the good and the bad. She told them about my struggles with loneliness, my disappointment in their father, but also my enduring love for them and my hope that they would grow up to be kind, compassionate people who understood the true meaning of family. Your grandmother used to say that love is like compound interest. Margaret told them one summer evening as they sat on the beach house deck watching the sunset. The more you invest in others, the more it grows. But if you make withdrawals without deposits, eventually the account runs empty. Emily, now pursuing a degree in social work, credits those conversations with shaping her career choice. I want to make sure no elderly person ever feels as abandoned as my grandmother did. She told Margaret, I want to be the kind of person who shows up. Michael, studying financial law, has a different perspective. I'm learning about fiduciary duty and ethical obligations, he explained. What my father did wasn't just morally wrong. It betrayed the fundamental trust between family members. I want to help protect vulnerable seniors from financial exploitation especially, when it comes from their own families. The ripple effects of my final decision continue to spread. Other families at Sunset Gardens, inspired by my story, have begun having difficult but necessary conversations about care visits and end-of-life wishes. The facility instituted a buddy program, pairing residents who have few visitors with volunteers like Margaret, ensuring no one has to face their final years alone. A local news station picked up the story, leading to a series of investigative reports on elder abandonment in luxury care facilities. The resulting public outcry led to new state regulations requiring better oversight of family visitation claims and stronger protections for seniors' financial autonomy. Jason's law firm, perhaps in an attempt at damage control, established a pro bono program providing legal services to elderly clients in care facilities. While Jason himself doesn't participate, the wounds are still too raw. Several of his junior associates have become passionate advocates for seniors' rights. The mathematics department at my old high school created the Beverly Holloway Memorial Prize, awarded annually to the student who best exemplifies the joy of mathematical discovery. Margaret funds the prize and presents it each year, sharing stories about my teaching career and my belief that mathematics is the poetry of logical ideas. As for Nicole, the experience seemed to shake something loose in her carefully controlled world. She began volunteering her surgical skills with Doctors Without Borders, spending several weeks each year providing free reconstructive surgery to children in developing countries. Margaret likes to think that somewhere in Nicole's journey toward redemption, my influence played a small part. The beach house remains the physical embodiment of my legacy. Margaret married David 3 years after my death, and they welcomed twin daughters, Beverly and Rose, named after me and Margaret's grandmother. The house is filled with the laughter of children, the sound of waves, and the warmth of a family, bound not by blood, but by choice and love. Every summer when Emily and Michael visit, Margaret takes them to my favorite spot on the beach where Charles and I used to watch the sunset. They scatter rose petals on the waves, my favorite flowers, and share stories about their year. It's become a tradition, a way of keeping my memory alive and teaching the next generation about the complexities of family forgiveness and the unexpected paths love can take. Your grandmother's greatest lesson, Margaret tells them as they watch the petals drift away on the tide, wasn't about revenge or punishment. It was about recognizing that love should be freely given to those who freely give it in return. She didn't disinherit your father out of spite. She chose to honor the person who honored her with presence and care. The story of my inheritance has become something of a legend in Cannon Beach. Local residents point out Beverly's haven to tourists, sharing snippets of the tale about the abandoned grandmother who found a new daughter in an unexpected place. The local library hosts an annual mathematics fair in my honor, funded by the Scholarship Foundation and organized by former students who remember my passion for teaching. Margaret keeps a journal of all these developments, filling it with newspaper clippings, photos, and letters from people whose lives were touched by the ripple effects of my decision. She plans to give it to Emily and Michael when they're older. A complete record of how one woman's choice to value kindness over obligation changed countless lives. Sometimes late at night, when the beach house is quiet and the only sound is the distant crash of waves, Margaret sits in my old rocking chair on the porch and talks to me. She tells me about the scholarship recipients, about Emily's latest social work project, about Michael's research into elder law. She shares her hopes for her daughters and her dreams for the future. "You gave me more than money, Beverly," she whispers to the star-filled sky. "You gave me purpose. You showed me that family isn't about genetics or legal obligations. It's about showing up day after day, especially when it's hard. You taught me that love isn't a finite resource to be hoarded, but an infinite wealth that grows when shared. And in those moments, I like to think my spirit is there, with her rocking gently in the sea, breeze watching over the family I chose and the legacy that continues to grow." The money was never the point. The beach house, the jewelry, the investments, they were just tools to deliver a message about what truly matters in life. Love, presence, kindness, choice. These are the currencies that never depreciate, the investments that always yield returns. Jason learned this lesson too late, but his children are learning it just in time. And Margaret, dear sweet Margaret, knew it all along. That's why she was the perfect heir to not just my earthly possessions, but to the values I held dear. She understood that sometimes the most profound act of love is simply showing up sitting quietly beside someone who needs company and treating them with the dignity and respect that every human being deserves. If you've ever experienced a situation where strangers became family, share your story in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories of justice and second chances. And remember, it's never too late to choose kindness, to show up for someone who needs you to become the family someone else is missing. The true inheritance I left behind wasn't measured in dollars or property deeds. It was measured in the lives changed, the hearts opened, and the understanding that love, like mathematics, follows certain immutable laws. What you give multiplies, what you withhold diminishes. And sometimes the most elegant solution to life's complex equation is simply to be present for those who need us most. My name was Beverly Holloway. I was a teacher, a mother, a grandmother, and in the end, I became a catalyst for change. My story isn't just about an inheritance or revenge. It's about the power of chosen family, the consequences of neglect, and the beautiful ways love finds its way to those who truly deserve it. Thank you for listening to my story. May it inspire you to cherish those who cherish you, to show up for the people in your life, and to remember that it's never too late to become someone's family.